these truths to be self-evident.
That all men are created equal.
As a member of Congress, I get to have a lot of really interesting people in the office. Experts on what they're talking about.
This is the podcast
for insights into the issues.
China, bioterrorism, Medicare for all. In-depth discussions.
Breaking it down into simple terms. We hold
these truths.
With Dan Crenshaw.
The Eagle has landed.
Great. Welcome back, folks, to the Hold These Truths podcast. And today is quite the story. We have with us Adriana Jones. Adriana, thanks so much for being on.
Thank you so much for having me, Congressman.
So we're talking about cartels today, but specifically your story, which is a gut-wrenching story from 2019, what's known as the Mora massacre, where you lost many of your family members. Let's just start there. The story of the Mormon population there, how that even came to be, and then what happened, and then we'll get into like we'll fast forward to today, to the fight against the cartels, and I think both the Mexican and American governments finally starting to take it a little bit more seriously, certainly more seriously than President Obrador ever took it, and with President Trump in office too. There's a newfound focus. But this is one of those, and it's a rare case, but it's one of those cases where U.S. citizens were targeted, killed, with seemingly no retribution or justice done. So walk us back to the beginning. Where do we start with this story?
Well, if you want to touch on the historical background for a second, just to get that out of the way. So Mormons in Mexico predate, we're talking 1800s, predate Mexican Revolution. There are breakoffs from what is the common LDS church that predate the LDS church, and there are breakoffs that are separate. There are hundreds of breakoffs. Yeah. There are not one type of Mormon.
Typical religion.
Yeah, all religions, exactly.
Everyone's breaking up with each other.
The more you study, the more you know we're all the same, right? And so we're just one more of those breakoffs. La Mora is actually not even the same breakoff that my hometown's from, or my family's breakoff would be from. Yeah. But my sister married somebody from La Mora.
Okay.
So it's about 3.5 hours away from the town that I grew up in. And the town
Which
I grew up in, Colonia LeBaron in Chihuahua.
Okay.
So this is in Sonora. So it's not even the same location. So yeah, there are a lot of Mormons in Mexico. That's just.
How big are these? Characterize. Help me visualize a community like this. Is it mostly Mormon? Is it mostly people who look like you?
So I tell people, think Chinatown, right?
Okay.
It's not like separate from the surrounding area. It's just like you kind of tell there's another culture that kind of blends into the other culture, right? My dad's Mexican dark, and half my siblings are darker like him, and half are blonder like me, and it's a mix, and everybody's bilingual, and it's just kind of, the schools are mixed, and everybody kind of, it's just like
interesting.
Yeah, or think of Italian neighborhoods in New York, or just kind of what it's like.
And it's been there for like a century.
Oh yeah. So there's Colonia Juarez, which is probably the oldest one. There is actually an LDS temple there. It's about 45 minutes from LeBaron. La Mora is 3.5 hours. They're all different. They all think differently. They have their own thoughts, but you can kind of tell, like, your adobe houses, and then boom, a brick building with very Mormon style.
Yeah.
So.
And this was, and then when this happened in 2019, walk us through that. So this is like any other day.
Any other day, nobody in their wildest dreams could have imagined like something like this could ever happen. I was in British Columbia on an anniversary trip, regular morning, and there had been a lot of fog, so our seaplane was canceled, and we were kind of waiting to get off the island. And my husband, I was shopping a little bit, and he kind of had a weird look on his face. He's listening to some messages on his phone, and I'm like, what? And he said, I don't know, something about Nita and the kids. Let me kind of go out and listen to these messages. And the first message that had come through was that Nita's vehicle was bullet-ridden and on fire. That was the first thing we heard.
And Nita's your sister?
Nita is my sister, and her and her 4 children were murdered. 4 of her 7 children. And when I said, so in my mind, I'm thinking that they were kidnapped, right? So I'm thinking Nita, and I'm thinking my 10-year-old niece, Crystal, and praying, that ransoms are, that's what's going through my mind. Never in my wildest dreams could have imagined what actually happened. So in this chaos, we make our way back to where the seaplanes take off, and my husband must have had a little bit of an intuition or something. He walked like 10 feet in front of me, and he was listening to messages, and he turned around and he said, they're all gone. They're all burned. They were all in there and they're gone. And I say that was the moment that the world changed forever. Like, I didn't know I lived in a world where something like that could ever happen. It seemed impossible. It still seems impossible. Kind of have to wake up and remember this is the reality that you're dealing with. My parents, as I'm sitting there just in my horror and my sorrow, my husband Dustin came up to me and he said that that my parents were planning on driving from LeBaron to Mora and up into the mountains, and he was worried about them. Yeah. And so I called my dad. I said, Dad, I'm worried about you. I don't know if you should go. Yeah. And he said, sweetheart, nobody's showing up. The entire Mexican government was informed by 10 a.m. of what was going on. Mm-hmm. You know, there wasn't gas in the helicopter. There wasn't, whatever excuses, nobody showed up. So my parents, my mom, she was the only woman in the convoy. 20 to 30 people from my community went up to the mountains to offer assistance. At this point, news was coming out that the other 2 women and their children were just missing. They had no idea what happened to them. Nita's vehicle was closer to town, so it was the first one discovered. When my mom, when they were trying to get to the scene, they were stopped at every military point along the way. Mm-hmm. It took them almost 8 hours to do what should have taken 3.5. We now believe it was to give the cartels a chance to get away. We actually believe it was collusion. My mom, when they finally arrived to the mountain pass, David Langford, who is husband to Donna Langford and father to 2 of the boys that were murdered, as well as all the surviving children, had gotten from Phoenix and Tucson. He made it there. Still no government officials, no military, nobody. And we're all showing up. And he got in the vehicle with my mother and my father. And they're driving up in a convoy. And when he's on that drive, he gets the call. Because at this point, his 8 surviving children that were all bullet-ridden, that had tried to walk home, but they were so shot up. They tell the story that, one kid's whole jaw was hanging off and the other kid on his leg, and that they used a pillow to hold the jaw in place, and they would carry him 20 feet and set him down in the middle of the road, go back for the other injured kid, go 40 feet, trying to make their way home. And they realized it was just impossible. They were never going to get home. So they actually ended up hiding all but one of the children up in the mountain pass. And Devin walked home 5 miles. He said he was shot at on his way home, ended up having to take the long route following the river bottom and making his way. So when he finally makes it to the town, he informs them that Christina, that Donna, and the 2 boys are dead. And my mom says she was sitting next to David when he got that call. And just that, she says, you'll never forget that guttural cry of pain of somebody who's going through that realization that your wife and your boys. And she said that he still feels guilty to this day because he doesn't know which 2 kids are dead. So he's trying to figure out who died and who made it, And so when they finally arrived to the scene where Christina and Donna were murdered, Christina was on the ground outside of the vehicle. She was a woman traveling with her baby. She got out, put her arms up. I'm a woman traveling alone. They shot her anyways. She was on the ground. Her baby Faith was in her car seat, and nobody knew that she was there. They assumed she was dead too, but there were bullet holes in her car seat. But miraculously, she was actually uninjured. Yeah. But she had been crying. She'd been there for 8 hours. She was completely soiled through, crying, so she didn't even have a voice anymore. She couldn't cry anymore.
Oh my God.
And
she survived.
The criminal negligence of nobody showing up to help this baby is just, she could have died, And they had plenty of time to try to help. My mom said that they didn't have a bottle, that somebody had some electrolytes and they were giving her little capfuls to just revive her a little bit. The next vehicle they came to was Donna and the 2 boys. When they
And who's coming upon these scenes? Is it
my mom, the convoy from the town?
It's you guys. You're still unaccompanied by any.
Still unaccompanied by any
anything.
police, any military. Nobody has shown up. This is, militia style, showing up to try to help in any way they can. Just the town coming forward.
Do you guys have arms? It's illegal to have arms.
It's illegal to have arms in Mexico. So the only thing that they had was somebody who'd had a police escort. Mm-hmm. In order for that police escort to be there, he had to be there, and he went specifically so the police escort would have to follow. Mm. That was the only people that had arms there that day, because it's illegal to. So they had no idea. We were all afraid. They had no idea what they were driving into. When my mom arrived to the scene where Nita and the kids their bodies were still in there, it took over 24 hours for the forensic team to show up. Mm. My mom says that she was left alone for hours because everybody was trying to find the kids, the injured ambulance. Imagine, it was a lot of
4 kids
chaos.
that they told to hide, right?
Yep. So there were 8 children that survived.
Yeah. So they found those kids.
They found those kids.
They were still alive.
They were still alive. Devin had made it home, but one of the little girls, she was 9. He took so long to come back, they would have been worried. So they ended up sending the little 9-year-old girl, and she had a gunshot wound to her arm, but she was the next least injured. Mm. And she'd gotten lost. So when they found all the other kids, she was still missing. Oh. So when David Langford was there, my mom tells the story that he's just absolutely so distraught over Donna and the 2 boys. But then somebody came up to him and told him that Mackenzie was missing. And she said it was like a shift. I have to go save my daughter now. It went from sorrow to I have to save her. And he was actually the one who understood the area enough to say, you can't see the lights of our town, but you can see the lights of another town. I wonder if she
might have thought
went that way. And sure enough, she had taken her shoe off and thrown it at a rattlesnake. And the first thing she said, 9 years old, was, "We have to go back. We have to go back for the other kids. We have to go back up there." Completely willing to go do her part. Their story of survival is absolutely incredible, honestly. Tough kids. And anybody who interviewed them, the FBI agents, everybody who interviewed them after said they'd never met kids like that in their whole life. Resilience can be, it's honestly incredible. But my mom, so the forensic team didn't show up. And when they finally showed up, they showed up with like garbage bags. Yeah. And she was like, if you guys do that, there won't be anything left to bury. They're already, the second you would touch them, they'd fall apart, she said. She actually got to see Nita kind of more whole before. It's just, it was pretty gruesome. She said she would talk to her, and then she'd go sit on a rock and cry for a bit, and then come back and talk to them a little bit. But she ended up sending to the town for honestly, sieves from the kitchen and paintbrushes from the art craft stuff. And my family actually did it themselves. They got their bodies in bins and covered them with sheets and took them back. When I arrived the next day, their bodies were already in the room, but they were covered by sheets, but they hadn't been placed in their coffins yet. And my brother-in-law, he asked everybody except for the family to please leave the room. And he told us that he did not recommend that we stay, that we needed to put the bodies in the coffins, but he did not recommend that we stay, that it would be the most horrific thing we ever witnessed in our life. But that she was our sister. We had the right to be there if we chose to be there. Not a single one of us left. We all stayed. And it was honestly I'm so glad I got to say goodbye to her, even though it seems horrific. It was actually I honored her by being willing to, to hold her. We cradled the babies, we swaddled them, we said prayers over their bodies.
How old are the kids in the car?
So Howard Jr. was 12, Crystal was 10, and the twins are 8 months old. And she had 3 other children that weren't with her, so they surviving children. When they burned the vehicle, they had opened fire on the vehicle, and when Howard Jr. was trying to escape the door, they actually walked up and shot him point blank. And there's actual video evidence saying, burn it. Mm-hmm. Saying to burn it. And based on what happened to the other kids and what we know of forensics, we believe there's very high possibility that they were alive when they burned it, shot up, but alive. It's It's
horrific
what
to think
nightmares are made of. But we uncovered Nita's body first, and it's like mostly her torso. What was left? And my first thought was just, my Nita. And my heart, like as a mother, like you can go through anything yourself, but her babies had to die that way. And she had to die knowing her babies were dying that way.
Yeah.
Like there's no worse way to die as a mom.
No.
There's nothing worse than what she went through. And that happened to her and her babies. I couldn't get over it. My heart just hurt for that. And I put my hand on her lungs. It was the most complete part of her body that was left, were her lungs. And I swore, I promised her, Nita, I will do everything. I will do everything in my power to make this world a safer place for your other 3 babies that you left behind. I will do whatever it takes until the end. Like, this is my vow. We will get there. And that's our story. It's her. She was there. This happened to her. We placed her in the coffin. The little twins were next, and we swaddled them in little things and actually laid them both next to her. And then Crystal was in a fetal position in the back of the vehicle. Just tight fetal, so afraid. It's just, which
is a little more terrifying because it does lend credence to the idea that she was not dead.
Exactly, which is, I just say, when people always ask, like, what are your nightmares of? And I'm like, it's actually that. And I think that why does it matter? Why does my brain go there? But who died first, and who had to watch the other one die, and who had to see the first shot? And I don't know, like, part of you wishes Nita didn't know, but then Howie would have had to know, and then Krista would have had, there's no way to not make it horrible. Was just horrible. And but your brain still does the tricks on you, and it just, so Crystal always had a purse, and not like a cute little girl purse, but we're talking 2-year-old with her mom's purse, like her whole life. And she's in this fetal position, right? And all of a sudden, there's somebody says, like, what is that? And it's the brightest pink leather you've ever seen. And all of a sudden, somebody says, it's her purse. It was a little piece of her purse that I've tucked in her arm. They're all burst out sobbing all over again. And then Howie was the most complete. Obviously, he was half out of the vehicle. So the biggest, his dad's like over 6 feet tall. He was going to be so tall. And it's just the most horrible thing that could happen. It's hands down the most. And I didn't know I lived in a world. Since that day, honestly, we have not stopped fighting. Within a month, we created a bill to try to have them designated cartels, have the United States.
Where'd you guys move? Did you stay in these settlements, or?
So people ask that, well, just move. I'm like, well, 5,000 people just move? We're not talking, La Mora, quite a few families moved, but not in the other ones, It's just, we're not talking a few families. We're talking generations and thousands of people, not to mention, well, what about everybody else? What about all the other bodies burned on the mountains? Are we going to pretend the cartels aren't murdering people every day? This is how I feel. People ask all the time, are you guys afraid? And I was like, if I held Nita, I held her babies. And I'm not willing to get up and fight and tell the world what is happening here. Who exactly do I expect to do it? Who do I think is going to stand up and say, pay attention, world. This problem is coming. If there's 100 murders in Mexico every day, there's 200 fentanyl poisonings in the U.S., there's human trafficking, there's, backpackfuls of fentanyl across the border. It's the exact same cartels doing all of it. If with my story and knowing what I know, I'm not willing to say something. Yeah. I have to.
That's very real. It demonstrates the sheer inhuman brutality that they engage in. There's kind of a death worship culture surrounding the cartels. It's something we've come across in the years that I've been looking at this problem set, and it's way worse than people realize. It's like, I'm not sure who had the ideas for the brutal killings first. Was it ISIS or the cartels? I think there's a pretty good chance it was the cartels. This has been going on for decades.
Oh, yeah. 20 something years, I tell people I'm a border girl. I know what it was like, and I saw the deterioration of what happened. Like, I've always traveled back and forth.
Yeah.
So I know, I saw it with my own eyes, the cartels take over.
And of course, in 2019, you have AMLO in power.
Hugs, not bullets.
Right.
Can you even imagine in the face of all of that?
Yeah, and likely connections with at least specific cartels. But then you ask yourself why, and we don't know, right? I mean, but you suggest certainly with your experiences, and it's hard to disagree with that this was not just some mistaken identity, which has happened before. It happened somewhat recently in Matamoros, where clearly the Americans were mistaken for Haitian drug runners. And in fact, the cartels were so nervous about American involvement that they actually turned in their guys, or at least what they said were the guys. But it's a little harder to make that argument here, considering the proximity with which the gunmen were. It's
my sister her car broke down.
Yeah.
So she
there's plenty of chances to see.
She completely moved.
Is she also blonde?
Taller than me, blue-eyed blonde. 2 car seats getting moved over. We're talking the kids, the luggage, right there in broad daylight, 10 o'clock. No. So why? This is the terror. So if you create terror, you control. You control everybody.
And what do they want to control about?
They want to.
There's some history
not the people. They want to control the plaza. They want to control the state. They want to control the roads. Right. They want to control the other cartel. They want to control the policemen. So if people are afraid, they have full control. It is terrorism. You can still make people afraid and not do that. I mean, it's crazy. So
there is some history, right, of the Mormon community speaking out against the cartels, but I was just doing some background reading.
10 years before.
But it was a while ago. It wasn't like recent.
A decade before, somebody was kidnapped, and one of my cousins and his brother became an activist, and he was working for his work.
When I lived in Colombia, everyone had been kidnapped once.
So that's so 40 years ago, it was a kidnapping thing. And then they got away, right? Those
right. It was a ransom issue. So you actually in Colombia, you have a really good chance if you just pay your money, get yourself back.
Exactly.
But Mexico's very different.
We're not dealing with that anymore.
No. It's a death worship.
So this is what I tell people. So growing up back and forth between Mexico, you knew what mafia was. Like, that's a drug lord, right? That was the extent of your knowledge of drugs outside of that world. Nobody knew somebody who'd been murdered. Nobody knew somebody who had involvement. Mm-hmm. Today in Mexico, there does not exist a person who hasn't lost somebody to the cartels. Yeah. And sicario is a word every kid knows. That means hitman. Yeah. That is now a word on the street. This has changed in the last 20 years. They murder people.
Oh, yeah.
And the fentanyl poisonings right now, 20 years from now, nobody will not know somebody who wasn't poisoned by fentanyl. Like, it's hitting. It's not the same thing that it used to be.
Yeah.
It just isn't. They've gotten stronger. They've gotten wealthier. And they've gotten brazen.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure.
So brazen. I'm telling you, broad daylight, women and children. They knew exactly. There was a phone call that came out in the investigation of a girlfriend of one of the cartel men saying, "How could you?" on the phone. And he said, "I don't give the orders, I take them. I was told to kill anybody who came on that road. I killed anybody who came on that road."
And like their initiation process is so insane.
Oh my goodness.
It's like, we're all surprised by how they could, how can you burn babies alive? Like, Hamas seems to have no problem with it. Neither do cartels. There's not that many groups in this category. Hamas does it because they teach themselves from a very early age that Jews aren't people. Okay, so they're able to burn babies, I guess. It's incomprehensible to us, but this is how they think. And we'll go back to the death worship. I'm not making this up. This is a very real cultural thing in the cartel world, where there is a worship of the occult, and their initiation process. I mean, you probably know more about it than I do. Is absolutely insane. They'll take people, they'll kidnap people. We have some recent evidence of this, where they basically make them fight and kill and torture each other until there's sort of like a few last men standing, and they're so dehumanized at that point that it's like, out of fear, or just you've just lost your mind completely, you'll just do whatever crazy thing and kind of one up each other on the brutality. It's insane.
So one of the recent cases that we've worked on in the nonprofit work was the forced recruitment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Camps that you've seen. And
right. These job centers that the Jalisco cartel is really bad about this.
The Madres Buscadoras, we work with them and they helped finding those camps. And the stories.
So the Madres Buscadoras, that's like the
Mothers Who
Search, right?
Mothers.
So these are mothers of victims are an activist group. They're pretty strong activists.
They're really strong.
They're the ones who found this recent mass grave, right? Because the government went, they're like, nothing here. And then they were like, bullshit. And then they went and uncovered it, and then it became a big story.
100%. They were crucial. They are an organization that works all across Mexico, and they are looking for the disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
So they specifically work with lost people. So they go anytime there's a tip of a mass grave,
mm-hmm.
they show up, and they're just experts at it now. Honestly, they know exactly the way it smells, the way it looks, the way it feels.
Why do you think they're not a target? I mean, I guess
they are.
They are.
They are actually targeted quite a bit, and what they do to them is, it's pretty scary, and some of them have been murdered, and people that work with them have.
Yeah.
But they found this mass grave. But the case that the specific case that we were working on, the guy said that, so they start you out, obviously there's training, but I don't even know if it can be said on a podcast, they actually butcher the bodies and force you to eat them.
Yeah.
And if you refuse,
you can say it on the podcast.
If you refuse to eat this body, they shoot you, and then they make you eat the body of the person they just shot. Do you want to be him, or do you want to get it down? And you actually have to force it down. And they make you eat it off the floor like a dog, and they do everything in their power to dehumanize you. So then by the time you get
it's like, imagine the worst things you saw on Game of Thrones and then times 10. I mean, it doesn't exist. It's like brutal. It's ISIS doesn't do this. I mean, it's just wild.
The most horrific things you can imagine. So now they have all these people that would get away if they could. I mean, one of the men who came out and told a story about shooting the children, he said, when I saw all the cabecitas, which means when I saw all the little heads, I aimed to miss, but I still had to shoot, because if I didn't shoot, they would shoot me. So we are dealing with a machine, a cancer that is cartels,
mm-hmm.
right? It's something bigger than just one. It's something that we have to go all in on. It really, really is. And it has grown so much and so quickly. It is out of Mexico's control. It is out of anybody. It's going to take everything we've got.
Yeah. That's why I describe it as you're fighting an insurgency. It's the best way to characterize it. It's sort of a mix of the brutality of the Al-Qaeda insurgency we fought in Iraq, ISIS as well. Same difference. With a Colombian flavor, of course, right? Because there's similarities there too. But I tell people, like, we change our paradigm shift here, and our mindset needs to be: we are fighting a counterinsurgency war. And lucky for us, we have a pretty good doctrine on how to do that. We know how to do that. And I guess on the optimistic side, like, we've got a few things in our favor at the moment, which is a very different Mexican administration. I'm curious what your thoughts are on that. I recently personally met the police chief of Sonora. You don't live in Sonora, you live in Chihuahua, but Sonora.
I live in Utah, but my family.
Okay. Gotcha. So some are doing really well. Like, and there was some recent operations in Sonora where they really went after some guys. It is happening, but it doesn't happen everywhere, because it's just plato plomo with these guys. Like, and I asked the police who work, they're like, yeah, I mean, it's just, I'm just trying to be the good one. And I'm like, well, I appreciate that, but it's like, not everybody is. How do you, and our job as policymakers, how do we create circumstances where it's at least possible to be a good guy?
Yeah, exactly.
Because this, I was very impressed with the police chief of Sonora. He comes from Tijuana, speaks perfect English, and is just ready to take him on. The new federal government is very aggressive at the moment. Something I don't think they're getting enough credit for. We are helping in a lot of ways, and I aim to expand that help massively. It's Trump's priority. I view it as my job to implement the strategy, at least the resources from the congressional level. We've got a good new ambassador too, I think, in Mexico, who I haven't met him, but Ambassador Johnson definitely has the background for this, coming from where he's come from. So there is some reason to believe that, at least there's a war coming. I mean, that's good news or bad news, I suppose, but there needs to be. I mean, because you're already in it.
Yeah. You're just pretending you're not in it.
You know, like you've known this since 2019.
It's for sure coming, and it's up to them to dictate how it works. I mean, cooperation means it's together or it's not, but it's going to happen either way because the numbers, the deaths are going to keep happening either way. So you do something or you don't, but this wave, this tsunami that's hitting our nations, this very regional issue.
It's sad that it took the fentanyl issue to kind of wake America up. I mean, it's not in America's interest to have a literal narco insurgency dominating a neighboring country that happens to be our biggest trading partner. That's just generally not good for us, whether the fentanyl issue exists or not. But since it does, it has awakened Americans to this problem, and it's a bipartisan problem. We have to obviously I lead the task force on this, which is now housed in the Intelligence Committee. So. There is a lot of resources moving against this problem. And, you know, the problem in the past, though, was, and you ran into this, right? So it's like, let's back up to the politics of 2019. I don't know what President Trump, if he could have done more or not, but he said, hey, it's time to go to war. We want to give the Mexicans everything we've got. Let's do this. I remember those are basically what he said. And AMLO was a hard no. We don't want, because they have the, and I've dealt with this personally when I went down there. I've been to Mexico City quite a few times in the last couple of years. And not this recent trip, but the one before that, it was under AMLO's administration. And what a wild conversation that was. Not with AMLO, but with his foreign ministry. And because I just and I always get straight to business and I speak Spanish. So I'm like, let's just cut right to the chase. Like, you guys need resources and weapons from us. We have a common enemy. Like, what else is there to talk about right now? And they go on to this diatribe that is just like this weird historical revisionist history of like, infringements on their sovereignty. And I'm like, are we talking about 1840s right now? Because that was a really long time ago, guys. Like, World War II is in the 1940s, and we're allies with those people. And, you can move past this shit. This is an insane conversation. And by the way, there's no cameras. They took our cell phones. I'm like, so it's just us. But you guys are still having an insane conversation. They're like, we'll never take anything from you. Yeah. We're Mexican. We're proud. And we're like, what are you talking about? Like, it's just, we don't want to invade you. We don't want any, like, what are you talking about?
So if there's a defining moment where I felt like Mexico, okay, wake up and accept some help, right? So I think of like the Culiacanazo, right? It was a few weeks before the massacre. So when we met with AMLO,
what's the
Culiacanazo for the Ovidio, who is Chapo Guzman's son, is part of one of the leaders of one of the sects of the Sinaloa cartel. Is broken up so many times now, but
Chapitos,
the Los Chapitos, right? He was finally captured and imprisoned in Mexico.
The first time. This is the first time it was captured, because there was another one later.
And they came out and they went up against the military, and the government chose to free him. Mm-hmm. Can you even imagine
I remember that? Yeah.
They chose to free him. So what does that say in the face of everybody he killed, of everything he's done? I mean, what it takes to actually get somebody in jail, and then you just let him go?
Yeah.
Maybe that was the moment you should have realized you needed some help. Maybe that was the moment you should say, no, this is bigger than us, right? And when I met the president of Mexico, he defended that decision. To me, of all people, can you imagine?
Really?
And I'm like,
what was his reasoning?
Well, just the cost of lives. I'm like, you mean the 100 people murdered every single day?
Yeah.
It's just incredible to me.
Also, it just shows how outgunned and outmaneuvered they are.
Exactly. And so we definitely see this. I mean, as far as like,
but he's the type that not even, she was an asshole. I mean, I really don't like AMLO. I mean,
it was a tough one to be
because he wouldn't even show remorse for it.
Yeah. It was a rough meeting, to say the least. And obviously we came to the U.S. We asked them to be designated terrorists. How do you attack a problem like the cartels? How do you even start? And how do you send a strong message that, Americans aren't to be messed with? You don't go around murdering Americans. You're not going to get away with it. I don't care if it was 5 years ago or 10 years ago or today. Simply not okay. How do you send a message to the cartels that killing innocent women and children is just not okay?
Right. And I think we look back on that moment. I wonder if we should have taken a stronger stance. we can't change that now.
But you can actually. We can
we
actually.
can
We'll designate them.
We can take a stronger stance now, of course. And again, that's been my life's work for like the last year and a half. But
I do finally feel like I'm speaking to somebody who actually.
We really like to talk about this issue. Not a lot of people like to actually research it and understand it. But there's a lot of things moving in our favor. I think the DoD is finally awake. Let's say. There's a lot of things moving in that direction. On the intelligence side, we've been at the tip of the spear for actually quite a long time. There's finally a partner that will at least execute on things we suggest. There's tons of extraditions happening. That's important. People don't realize how important the extraditions are. And I didn't even realize it because I was like, what does it matter whether they rot in jail in Mexico or rot in jail here? What do we have to deal with them? Is it just like whoever gets to the credit? But no, the reality is you really, both Mexico and the U.S., we want these kingpins and whether they're middle management or top management, we want them out of the country because they continue to operate their entire cartel or whatever they're operating from the jails. And it was so funny, the word we got when Mexico extradited like 29 on our list. They wanted to extradite more, actually. We had to say no to a bunch because they just weren't even on the list. It was confusion with the list, but whatever. They wanted, they're very willing at this point. And even the corrupt, what would you call them, jail, the directors of the prisons, who are just known for their corruption. And I guess, part of it's like, I understand it to an extent. Like you're dealing with these local and state police. What choice do they have? It is a plato plomo type
they're being held hostage for sure.
It's not an excuse, but it is reality. But even the directors of those prisons were like, thank you God for getting them out of here. Cause like they've killed many of their guards. They've been responsible for a lot of murders, so even the corrupt ones are like, we still want to get rid of them. And we've got to take advantage of that somehow. Yeah. There's a lot of ideas floating around, but what it really comes down to is intent, focus, and resources.
Absolutely. I know that what we are working on and where our focus has really been is how can we empower victims so that the momentum continues, right? So it continues beyond this administration. So if we don't do something legislatively that can actually impact in the future, the next tragedy, the world tragedy that comes along, the focus is now gone, and this is still happening in Mexico, and people are still dying every day.
It's hard to keep focused right now. There's a lot of things going around.
Exactly,
around
and
the
that's
world.
that. There's 200.
I'm
plus,
working my ass off to try and keep the focus on this.
It's crazy. 200 plus fentanyl poisonings every single day, and how do we help? How do we make an impact? How do we actually empower the victims? And the reason we started a new nonprofit called AMFAC. So it's American Families Against Cartel Terrorism. So the concept and the idea is how can we empower victims? And the reason I think it's so important to find this avenue as opposed to, working with the other governments is because when you find a way for victims to tell their story, their tenacity, their heartache, they're never going to give up on telling the world what happened. They're never going to stop fighting for it. So creating a fund and creating a foundation that empowers victims will organically keep the movement going. Will organically make sure that no one's left behind, right? It creates that avenue because it's hard. We've been knocking on doors for 5.5 years. We have been screaming. We have been traveling. We've been doing everything in our power, and we've come such a long way. We really have. And five and a half years ago, everybody, no, they're not terrorists. Today, you don't hear the word cartel without terrorism attached. So everybody now agrees and perfectly understands. We've changed the dialogue, right? But how do we move past dialogue to actually empowering victims and making an impact, making the world a safer place like I promised Nita I would do? And so I do think defining obviously the fact that Juarez and La Línea were not added to that list of terrorists. That was such a sucker punch for my family. Yeah. After 5.5 years, we thought that was our moment that we'd fought for, that we bled for, and they weren't even on the list.
I don't know why.
I'm still wondering.
The only consolation I'll give you is that the general FTO designation is a bit more of a message than it is a thing that.
But it's a message to them, and that does protect families to a certain extent. And it does say this isn't allowed, and it does say do not do this to Americans. We'll come for you eventually, right? Yeah. It does put that little safety net. However, perceived. And I do think that
it could have been as simple as they wrote the executive order a little too quickly, but
that's what I'm hoping.
It doesn't. Again, the consolation I'll give you it has no bearing on how they're targeted. Yeah. Whether you're a terrorist or a narco, it doesn't matter. Well, there's a little bit different in
So one of the things,
but for the most part, we're going to target it the same.
Absolutely. So you probably know this working in Mexico and Colombia. The governments are very obtuse. So if they're not designated cartels, it's harder for us to claim they're cartels. And as far as our case and any justice, to this day, not a single person has been sentenced for those murders. We have videos saying
there's arrests, right? But
no sentencing.
No sentencing. Yeah.
And so, having the designation of the cartels,
or is it all in Sonora?
It's a federal case, so it's actually moved federally. But
that's something we should look into and ask them, since we have a good relationship now with the federal side. And there's a lot of changes happening in Mexico. They're pretty wild. I mean, and maybe I think mostly for the good. They just decided that they would elect judges.
I know.
So that's a double-edged sword. We elect judges in Texas, and there's a double-edged sword to electing judges. Because in theory, a dog catcher can become a judge. If they're popular enough. That's democracy is wonderful like that. In Mexico, what it means is Sheinbaum is putting a huge finger on the judicial system. Yep. But I kind of like that because I know just based on her actions and who she's putting in charge of national security that she's willing to take this war on. So it could end up being a good thing. I think the jury's still out on that. No pun intended, since we're talking about judges. But it could be a good thing. And they've also, Mexico is so far behind when it comes to just basic that their legal structure is not designed to prosecute people. Yes, their prosecutors are not trained. Their law enforcement are not trained to even do investigations. I remember sitting down with Secretary Harfuch, who's now basically the head of all security in Mexico for it's not his exact title, but that's basically who he is. And he's a fantastic guy. I mean, couldn't ask for a better partner. And I was like, when I first met him, I asked him, because he's famous for sort of cleaning up Mexico City as a police chief. And he's been targeted by the cartels. Kind of one of the ways, he's pretty legit. He's been shot up by the Jalisco cartel. And I was like, how'd you clean it up? He's like, well, we started this crazy thing called investigations. And I'm like, what? He's like, what you don't understand about Mexican policing is they're basically security guards, like street corner security. They see something, they'll try and stop it, maybe. But there's no investigatory powers. And so that's changing, at least at the state level. Local police don't really have it. And so you're just dealing with this lack of institution that you would think would exist. And it's also, it's a huge difference between Mexico and Colombia in this regard. Colombia was able to sort of come out of this situation because they had a lot of institutional memory. They just had to fix some problems.
They did do a lot of vetting and police work and stuff, and they tried that in Mexico. And then the next administration came in and said it was unconstitutional to vet everybody. So it would be nice to see that policy come back for sure.
Yeah, the federal police, most Americans commonly think of as the federales, hasn't existed for a while. They became the National Guard, and now it's still the National Guard, probably just getting wrapped right into the Army. Yep. I don't really care. I just care that it works, and that's
well, as of right now, it doesn't seem like it's working yet, but hopefully on the Mexico side, at the end of the day, we are just trying to save lives, right? We're trying to save lives on both sides of the border. We're trying to keep what happened to my family from happening to any other family. And I think that for America to wake up and see that this war is on, it's on here now, it's happening.
Been here for a while.
It's been that tsunami has hit, the fentanyl poisonings, the human trafficking, the actual violence is coming into our streets. It's here. And we don't do something about it. If we don't, all hands on deck, both sides, where are we going to be 20 years from now? Mm-hmm. Where are we going to be in this fentanyl epidemic?
Where are we? Controlled narco state.
Completely, nothing left. And we've already gone too far. It's going to take everything to push back on it.
It'll take 20 years. I mean, I say in this strategy, there's the short-term goals we have, which is essentially stopping fentanyl. And that's a short-term goal and a possible goal, because in the end, these people, while they are psychotic death worshipers who eat flesh, they're also businessmen. And we've seen a lot of evidence of this. They have a lot of ways of making money. Fentanyl is just one of them. And if fentanyl is the thing that's bringing the heat on them, they have a desire to stop it. Again, we've seen this, the Chapitos being in particular after the sex. So a video, you mentioned him earlier, who they famously let go. We did get him later.
Yes, we did.
Recently. Not that recent. God, we might be going on like a year and a half, 2 years. Anyway, it was in January of 24. I don't know. It was somewhat recently. It was quite the raid. I mean, an insane military operation. And even, that was even under AMLO. I'll give him credit for that. But like, it also made it very clear to me the kind of resources Mexico needs. What I noted from that raid, because I got to see all the videos and everything from it. Just a couple of things of note. One, like, I think people might imagine this sort of Iraq style like battle, but what you don't realize is, as the army was trying to, in a convoy, trying to save like the special operators that were on target with Ovidio, because they had to go basically do a quick reaction force rescue mission. You know, they're literally battling the entire way there. And I want people to imagine a scene that looks a lot like your own suburb. Like, you're not out in a third world country. Like, they're literally running over a cartel guy and shooting him in a Starbucks drive-through. Like, that's like, this is the kind of, like, this is how crazy it is. Like, you know, it's a place where Starbucks feels like it's a good business to put a franchise there. But also it's in the middle of a cartel war. The other thing I noticed is, you know, Mexicans lack basic things like close air support. You know, as a Navy SEAL, if I'm on target and then I get surrounded by sicarios, we just call an AC-130 gunship and they're all dead. Yeah. And they're like, clear. And then you leave. It's really simple. But, you know, we need to be providing that to the Mexicans. And again, for the first time, they're like, yeah, we would love that. And so I'm just trying to like push that conversation. Yeah,
my only thing I'm nervous about is like the Sinaloa cartel, for example, that they are kind of pretending to do due diligence on the fentanyl, waiting for this. Definitely. And then the second this movement is over, they're going to be right back just as strong as before. And so we have to create something for American families that stands the test of time, because they're savvier than we are, and they're going to pivot faster. Well, that's where
the second mission comes in, right? There's two missions. One, deter fentanyl, and that's the right word, is deter it. You deter it through fear. You keep doing this, we're going to keep coming after you, okay? And then they'll want to start making deals, and our response should be, you had your chance, too bad, because now the second mission is counterinsurgency. That's a 20-year mission, right? It's taken 20 years in Colombia, and it's still not done. And but it does work. And I know counterinsurgency effectively means us backing up the federal government to basically take territory, hold it, uphold local and state police so that they don't have to choose between money or a bullet to the head. And you go state by state and you eradicate slowly, but they're so integrated into the private sector and the pop culture and the government. It's a rough, that's why it's a counterinsurgency operation. And that's why it lasts 20 years. And, you know, we just got to be ready for the fight, and we need every little bit of help we can get. So your advocacy is great. How can people get involved with your group and take action, and like what?
We have two nonprofits. So we have AMFACT and Rhonita Vive, named after my sister. It means Rhonita lives. So you can find us. We'll have a website for AMFACT up soon as well. At the end of the day, we're just doing best.
And what can people expect if they wanted to get involved? Like, so if maybe it's a family who lost their kid to a fentanyl overdose, and I'm assuming you also have Mexican families that are part of this as well.
Absolutely. So on the U.S. side, it will be fentanyl poisoning quite a bit, and we will be reaching out to families that have lost loved ones. We've talked just today about how to creating a fund for families that they could actually potentially see money through. What it does is, you need a lawyer to advocate for you. And without a fund, you're not going to have a lawyer to advocate for you. It has to exist. But a family can't do it alone. You can't go after cartels and fentanyl, that stuff. You need someone. So a fund has to exist for families to be able to have access to. But if they have access, I believe those families will come forward, and the stories will tell themselves. Like it will be immediate and organic. Everybody will be able to see. It'll be in the news. Our nonprofit AMFAC will be reaching out to families. We'll be putting it out there. And that's the hope, is to be able to tell more stories and to get people to understand really what is happening to American families every single day and what we can do about it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know how many hundreds of thousands of Americans live in Mexico. This is it's something we have to confront. I mean, regardless of your advocacy, at least I can tell you up here we are listening. We're in the middle. It's one of the things I spend most of my hours doing. The president, obviously, the first thing he did was designate them FTOs. So that's just the first step. We got a lot of work to do, and we're doing it.
I'm hopeful, and thank you so much. I honestly, I do feel like I'm finally speaking to somebody who can make an impact and will, and is choosing to, and has taken this on head on. So I'm grateful to you for that. Just
Thank you.
As a victim, I really am. Thank you.
Oh, I'm grateful to you for sharing your story. It's incredible, and people need to hear it. So, Adriana, thank you for being on.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.